already begun to protect the plantations against raids. The line consisted of a series of military posts connected by the cordon path. The first part of it had been constructed in 1770, but a difference of opinion had arisen between Nepveu and Fourgeaud, the commander of the troops, about the extension of the cordon. Fourgeaud wanted to chase the bony Maroons from their villages and agricultural lands so that their strength was broken. Nepveu was in favor of a defensive strategy and wanted to expand the cordon, which in his opinion offered the best protection for the plantations located west of the defense line. In 1775 Nepveu received permission from the directors of the society to expand the line. Ultimately, the defense cordon ran from the Suriname River at the Jodenseven to the Boven-Cumwin, and then further north via the upper reaches of the Perica and the Kotica and from there to the Atlantic coast. The entire line consisted of 33 posts, had a length of about 94 kilometers and was completed in 1778. Action of the Redi Musu during the Second Boni War, 1789 to 1793. In 1784, the number of Redi Musu had declined sharply due to mortality and other circumstances. The strength of the corps amounted to 178 persons, a number of whom were unable to perform active duty due to injuries and illness. Frédéricey, who had been appointed major and leader of the corps in 1781, pushed to restore the corps to strength. At his suggestion, the government decided to buy 15 to 20 men from the next slave ship and add them to the corps. Frédéricey was also given permission to hire free mulattoes or blacks. Their wages amounted to F12 per month, plus clothing and food. Some Aucheners also joined the corps. From 1785 onwards, Maroon raids from French Guiana on Surinamese plantations increased again. In October 1785, the Beshagenbosch plantation was raided. In 1789 the Bonus raided 4 plantations located on the Suriname River. The Clarenbeek plantation was also raided again. Merle, the director of the plantation, was taken to Oroku, Boni's new village, located on the French bank of the Marowen. In June 1789, Stolman was again appointed commander of the Vrijkorps. He was ordered to establish a new military post on the Marowen with a detachment of heavy hunters and society troops. Stolman decided to establish the post at the Armina Falls. The colony took advantage of the confusion in France, caused by the French Revolution, to have its troops also operate in French Guiana. After several explorations and failed attacks from the new post, a large contingent of black hunters finally managed to conquer the village of Oroku from Boni on April 30, 1790. Ascan of Afreda, a defected Boni, had shown the way to the village. On May 14 and 15, 1790, the village of Puja was conquered and the village of Cormanton Kajo, which was located on the island of Langatabich. To celebrate the capture of Oroku, a party was organized in Paramaribo during which a poem by Paul-François Rousse was recited. After taking Oroku, the Bonus had moved upriver to the area around the Petrosungo Falls. Their situation was bad because they could no longer reach their old agricultural plots. In addition, a smallpox epidemic had broken out. Frédéricey, who had meanwhile been appointed governor, wanted to definitively settle the battle with the Bonus after the successful capture of Oroku and requested the court of police to restore the Vrijkorps to strength. The corps was expanded by 100 men for 3 to 4 months. The owners received compensation of 15 stubers per day per slave and compensation of F600 if a slave was killed during service. Some defected Maroons were also included in the corps. Frédéricey also gave instructions to the commanders on the Marowen to follow a double strategy regarding the Bonis. They had to appear sympathetic to Boni's requests to make peace, provided that the Bonis declared themselves willing to hand over the slaves they had taken from the plantations in 1789. At the same time, the expeditions to the upper reaches of the Marowen continued and the Aucheners, with whom the Bonis maintained friendly relations, were pressured to turn against the Bonis. In August 1791, the Bonis were driven from their village of Inji Pule Seaton near Petrosungo Falls by a detachment of 120 men, partly Redi Musu, partly society troops, and among them were also 5 defectors, including Ascan of Afreda. The Bonis were hunted again and found a new place to stay on the Lawa. Stolman then decided to move the military post to the confluence of the Lawa and Tepanahoni in December 1791. He established the post on the island that would later be called Stoelmans Island. The Bonis were ultimately defeated definitively by the Auchiners. The Auchiners had been pressured by the governor to give up their friendly relations with the Bonis and to end the trading relationship. On February 20, 1793 they attacked the Bonis. During this trip Boni was killed by Bambi, an Auchin chief. The Bonis who fell into the hands of the colony after Boni's death were treated fairly mildly. The leaders were shipped to St. Eustatius and sold into slavery there. Others returned to their old plantation and some were incorporated into the Niger Bridge Corps. Mutiny. After 1793 the activity of the Corps decreased considerably. It was used to suppress resistance on plantations and maintain peace and to track down and retrieve runaway slaves. The discipline and fighting spirit of the Corps declined and their leaders no longer had the stature of the previous conductors. On September 7, 1805, mutiny broke out at some posts of the cordon. The Corps at that time consisted of 336 men and 20 non-commissioned officers. 30 black hunters, stationed in the Orangibo and Imotopi posts on the cordon pad near the Boven-Cumwin, murdered 2 officers, a sergeant, 2 commissioners, and the director of a plantation. The rebels then moved to the Armina post on the Marowen. The black hunters stationed there joined the rebels. All the whites, the officers, and the surgeon were murdered. The detachment stationed at the Mapane post also joined so that the total number of insurgent Raidi Musu was about 80 men. After the raid on Armina they moved further upstream where they received support from the Auchiners who assigned them Paolo Egido to settle. In 1806, at the request of Governor William Carleon Hughes, an investigation into the causes of the mutiny was initiated. There appeared to be 2 main causes. When the Corps was founded, a militia-like organizational form was chosen with its own looser discipline. Violations were not subject to military jurisdiction but were dealt with by the Court of Justice. In 1799 the Corps was placed under rigid military discipline without proper instruction or transitional measures. Another reason was that a number of Bonis were incorporated into the Corps in 1795–96 and later in 1797, despite doubts about their loyalty. They were fighters against oppression who could now be used against their own people. During their time in service, these hunters continued to keep in touch with their families in the villages along the Marowen River, who now had good relations with the Auchiners again. A life of freedom was preferred by this Raidi Musu to a disciplined life in the Corps. The position of the rebel black hunters was eventually settled in a new treaty with the Jukas, Maroons. The Auchiners had already promised the government in 1791 that the Bonis who had settled in their area would not cause any damage to the colony. They also kept the rebellious black hunters of 1805 under their control. The draft treaty of 1809 stated that the Auchiners would extradite the runaway slaves and the rebellious black hunters to the government and that in the event that the government should agree at some time to attack the reported rebels, the Auchiners not only will not resist such an expedition, or try to assist the rebels in any way, whether by providing shelters or otherwise, but will be helpful in all respects. The government eventually had to drop this demand and the runaways and rebels continued to live in the Auchiners' habitats and remained under their jurisdiction until 1860. Descendants of this Raidi Musu still live in the village of Palagudu on an island in the Marowen at the confluence of the Tepanahoni and the Lawa.